"You can be in our family if you want," said the little girl to the lonely CEO sitting on the bench on New Year's Eve. The snow had begun to fall early that evening, soft and silent, blanketing the sidewalks and trees in gentle white. Central Park was hushed under winter's breath, lit by the golden glow of distant city lights. Andrew Hale sat alone on the same bench he had returned to every year. His charcoal wool coat was buttoned tight, a grey scarf tucked at the collar. In his gloved hands he held 2 paper cups of cocoa. One steamed faintly, the other sat untouched beside him. That one was not for him. He stared across the empty path where occasional footsteps crunched through the snow, but his gaze was distant, lost in places no one else could see. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a worn photograph, creases folding its corners, colors faded, but still alive in memory. A woman laughed in the image, her eyes sparkling. A little boy grinned beside her, round cheeks peeking out from under an oversized wool hat. His wife, his son, they had died 5 years ago, December 31st, New Year's Eve. Not at this hour exactly, but on this night all the same. Andrew blinked slowly, the familiar sting behind his eyes sharp and steady. Back then, his world had been full. He was already successful, CEO, investor, name on every magazine. But those titles meant nothing next to the weight of his son's small hand or his wife's quiet smile over dinner. Their traditions had been simple. Cocoa from the corner cafe, a walk through the snow, laughter echoing under winter trees. Then everything changed. That year he'd stayed late at the office. He called to say he was on his way. But the call never connected. A truck ran a red light. His wife died instantly. His son survived just long enough for Andrew to reach the hospital and say goodbye. Since then, the bench had become his ritual. Same time, same coat, same 2 cups. Grief had softened into something quieter, an ache, a hollow space that never fully healed. He no longer celebrated. No champagne, no resolutions, just silence and the ticking of a clock he no longer followed. He brought the second cup anyway, maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt. "I brought it again," he murmured, glancing at it. "In case you showed up this year." He knew it was foolish. He said it anyway. Leaning back, he let the cold settle in. He hadn't come for comfort. He had come to sit with ghosts. Snow fell thicker now, dusting his coat, clinging to his hair. In the distance, a saxophone played soft, slow, just audible above the hush. He watched couples stroll past, families tugging children wrapped in bright scarves. Their voices were low, warm with anticipation. Midnight was still hours away, but joy was in the air. Not for him. He had everything the world admired. Yet none of it filled the quiet. None of it stopped him from setting 2 places at a table he never used. He looked again at the untouched cup beside him. Steam had stopped rising. Andrew exhaled, closed his eyes, just him and the second cup, and the memory of a life that once was. The snow had thickened. A hush settled over the park, softening the city's noise until only faint music and muffled footsteps remained. Andrew sat alone on the same bench he returned to every year. His coat was heavy and dark. His gloves gripped 2 cocoa cups, one half empty, the other untouched. That second cup wasn't for him. He barely noticed the small figure approaching. A little girl in a pink princess dress, sparkling under the streetlights, stopped in front of him. Over her dress, she wore a cardigan too large for her, buttoned unevenly. Her boots didn't match, and her mittens dangled from a string around her neck. She looked at him with wide brown eyes. "Hi," she said. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. "Why are you sitting here alone?" she asked. Her voice was soft, curious, unafraid. Before he could answer, she added, "My mommy says no one should be alone on New Year's Eve." "I like the quiet," Andrew replied, his voice unused to conversation. She tilted her head. "Quiet's better when you share it," a woman's voice called from down the path. "Lily," Andrew turned. A young woman in a wool coat and scarf was approaching, her breath visible in the cold air. Her eyes were cautious. "I'm sorry," she said as she reached them. "She's very friendly." "She's not bothering me," Andrew said, rising from the bench. Lily rummaged through a small tote bag on her shoulder. "I was saving this," she said, pulling out a lumpy pink whack vape bundle. "But you can have it. It's the last one." He crouched to her level and accepted the gift. "Thank you." "It's a cookie," Lily explained proudly. "I helped. I put sprinkles, but not too many. Mommy says sugar makes me a rocket ship." Andrew chuckled, unwrapping it gently. It was star-shaped, slightly burnt, its frosting smudged. He took a bite. "Sweet, imperfect, delicious," he said. Lily grinned, satisfied. Maya, the woman, stood a little closer now, visibly relaxing. He wanted to give cookies to people who looked like they needed one. Andrew looked at her. Her smile was kind but guarded, the kind of expression worn by someone who had learned to hope cautiously. "She has a generous heart," he said. "She gets it from her dad," Maya replied softly. "He was like that." Andrew's eyes fell to the second cocoa beside him. Maya noticed. "You're welcome to join us," she offered, tentative. "It's just soup and toast. But it's warm, and it's New Year's Eve. No flirtation, no expectation, just sincerity." Andrew glanced at Lily, now spinning and trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. For a moment, the idea tempted him, but old instincts returned. Distance routine. "Thank you," he said gently. "That's very kind. But I should," he hesitated. The cookie sweetness lingered, so did Lily's words. Maya nodded with quiet understanding. Of course, she took Lily's hand. "Time to go, sweetheart." Lily turned back. "Happy almost New Year." Andrew raised his cocoa in a soft toast. "Happy almost New Year to you, too." He watched them disappear down the path. Maya's arm wrapped gently around Lily's shoulders, Lily skipping beside her, twirling now and then. When they were gone, the cold felt a little sharper. Andrew looked at the cookie crumbs in his palm. Then slowly he smiled. He didn't know why the moment had touched him so deeply, but somehow that star-shaped cookie had cracked something open inside him. Something warm, something like hope. The streetlights buzzed softly as Andrew stood at the edge of the sidewalk, staring up at the modest brick apartment building. Snow was still falling, though lighter now, thin silver flakes swirling beneath the glow of the lamps. His breath clouded the air in front of him. In his gloved hands, he held a small cake box tied with red string and a paper bag with 3 sparklers poking out the top. He wasn't sure how long he had been standing there. The apartment number Maya had scribbled on the back of Lily's cookie wrapper was crumpled in his coat pocket. He could recite it now without looking. But even as he stood in front of the right door, something in him wavered. He was about to turn back. This had been a foolish idea. She had only extended the invitation out of politeness, and he had already declined. Why come now? He didn't belong in the warmth of other people's homes. Not anymore. He took one small step back, and then he heard it, a laugh. High, bright, unmistakably Lies. It spilled out from the cracked window above, floated down into the stillness like the last note of a favorite song. He froze. The sound tugged something in his chest, something fragile and forgotten. He stepped forward again. Then, before he could overthink it, he raised his hand and knocked. There was a shuffling sound inside. The light under the door shifted. A lock clicked. Then a second one. The door opened. Maya stood there in thick socks and an oversized sweater, her hair loosely pulled back. Her eyes widened in surprise, then softened into something unreadable. "Mr. Hale," she said, not quite a question. Andrew cleared his throat. "Andrew," he corrected gently, "I wasn't sure I'd come. I hope this isn't intruding." She glanced down at the cake box and the sparklers, then back up at him. Her smile was slow, cautious, but not closed. "Come in," she said quietly. "It's cold." He stepped inside. The apartment was small. A third-air floor walk-up with peeling paint and mismatched furniture, but it radiated something far more powerful than comfort. Care. A knitted throw blanket was draped over the couch. Handmade drawings were pinned to the walls with Scotch tape. The smell of soup lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of cinnamon. It felt lived in, loved. Andrew stood awkwardly near the door, unsure of where to go, until Lily came barreling in from the kitchen. "You came?" she shouted. Before he could say a word, she threw her arms around his leg. He blinked down at her, startled, and then laughed. A real laugh, soft and unsure as he knelt to return her hug. "I brought cake," he said, holding up the box. Lily gasped. With frosting, he opened the lid slightly. Extra. She looked like she had just been handed the moon. Maya chuckled behind them, shaking her head. "You didn't have to bring anything. I wanted to," Andrew said. They moved into the small living room where a candle flickered on the low coffee table next to 2 bowls of half-eaten soup. Soft jazz hummed from an old radio in the corner. Lily curled up on a blanket near the heater, the cake box beside her like treasure. Maya poured him a cup of tea, and they sat on opposite ends of the couch, separated by a worn cushion, but closer than they had been a few hours ago. For a long time, no one spoke. Andrew looked around at the modest space, the kind of place where laughter echoed, where time wasn't eaten by boardrooms and schedules, where nothing matched and nothing had to. "I used to think silence was the only thing that felt honest," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "But this feels real too." Maya tilted her head. "Sometimes real isn't perfect, but it's still real." He nodded slowly, absorbing that. She didn't press him, didn't ask about the second cocoa or the photograph in his pocket. She simply existed beside him, quietly, offering him a seat at the table of something whole. Andrew stared at the tiny lights strung across the window. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like a CEO or a grieving husband or a man trying to outwalk his past. He just felt human. Lily ran over and popped a children's book into his lap. "Will you read to me?" Andrew hesitated. Then he smiled. "I'd be honored." As he opened the book and began to read, Maya rested her head on her hand, watching them. Her guard had not completely fallen, but it had softened. And in that little living room, with the candle light flickering and Lily curled up beside him, Andrew felt something he hadn't dared to feel in years: warmth. The soup was long gone. The cake had been devoured, mostly by Lily, who had gotten frosting on her nose and laughed like it was the best thing in the world. The sparklers sat unopened on the windowsill, waiting for midnight. The apartment now hummed with quiet. Maya cleared the dishes as Lily yawned and dragged her blanket across the floor. She curled up on the rug by the heater again, her princess dress wrinkled and one sock halfway off. She had refused to take the dress off, even though Maya had tried twice. Just for tonight, Lily had insisted. Andrew sat on the edge of the couch, holding a half-empty cup of tea. He wasn't sure what hour it was anymore. Time had softened around the edges, like the corners of Maya's living room furniture. Lily suddenly sat up, looking serious. "Oh, I forgot." She crawled over to the small mattress in the corner, clearly her little bed, and reached beneath the pillow. Her tiny hand emerged with a folded piece of paper. "I wrote to Santa," she whispered, "just in case he reads it late." She shuffled back to Andrew and handed him the note. "It's okay to read," she added. "It's not a secret." He unfolded it gently, crayon handwriting uneven and sweet. A few misspelled words, a drawing of what looked like a bowl of soup, and 3 stick figures. He read the words once, then again. "Dear Santa, please give Mommy someone who won't leave again. She's really nice and makes the best soup. Love, Lily." Andrew's hand trembled slightly as he held the letter. He swallowed hard, but his throat felt tight. Maya stood nearby, watching. "She still believes," she said softly, almost apologetically. "In Santa, in magic, in things coming back." She walked over and sat beside him, folding her legs under her. Her voice dropped lower. "I used to believe too," she added. "But a few years ago someone tried. A kind man wanted to be part of our life, but I wasn't ready. I got scared." Andrew looked at her, really looked at her, the soft lines under her eyes, the strength in her voice, the gentleness she tried to hide behind politeness. "I didn't want Lily to love someone who might leave," she continued. "It's easier to say no than to risk breaking her twice." There was no bitterness in her voice, just honesty, earned and quiet. Andrew didn't speak. Instead, he stood slowly and walked toward the balcony door. He needed air, space, something. The sliding glass door creaked as he opened it. Outside, the city glowed with distant light. Apartment windows blinked warm yellow in the distance. Somewhere beyond the buildings, the first fireworks started, soft pops and streaks of color in the dark sky. He gripped the cold metal railing. His heart beat heavy and uneven. He had not cried in 5 years, not once. He hadn't allowed himself to. He had poured every drop of grief into work, into charity, into building something so structured it could keep the pain out. But here on this quiet balcony, holding the letter of a child who had nothing to gain from lying, his chest cracked open, his breath hitched, and he cried. Not the angry, wounded kind of tears that come from sudden loss, but the soft, shattering tears that come when something buried deep begins to thaw. Inside, Maya stood silently by the open door. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask. She simply wrapped a blanket around Lily and turned off the overhead light. When Andrew came back inside a few minutes later, his eyes were red. He didn't hide it. He sat back down on the couch and folded Lily's letter carefully, tucking it into the pocket of his coat like it was something sacred. No one spoke. Lily, half asleep, murmured from the floor, "Did he read it?" Andrew looked at her. "Yes," he said quietly. "I think he did." 3 days after New Year's, the invitation came in a message that was both hesitant and heartfelt. Andrew had typed it 3 times before finally pressing send. "Lunch at my office. No pressure, just I'd like to see you both." To his surprise, Maya replied within the hour. "If Lily has her way, we'll be there." Friday afternoon, the sleek elevator doors opened to reveal a very different kind of presence in the corporate building. Lily skipped into the marble-floored lobby, her pink sneakers squeaking on every step, one hand holding tightly to Maya's, and the other clutching a folded piece of paper. Her little cardigan sleeves kept slipping past her hands, and she kept tugging them back up without missing a beat. Maya, in a simple blouse and jeans, looked both out of place and completely dignified. She walked with her chin slightly lifted, as if bracing herself for the weight of judgment. Whispers followed them almost immediately. "That's her. Is that his niece? Do you think she's the reason he left the board meeting early this week?" Andrew met them in the hallway with a calm smile that silenced the speculation. He didn't care who watched. His gaze softened the moment he saw them. "You found it," he said, holding the elevator open. "Lily was our GPS," Maya said lightly. "Actually, Mommy missed the turn, but I told her it was this building because the glass is shiny." Lily corrected, completely unfazed. Andrew laughed, a real one, low and warm, and gestured them inside. Lunch was served in the private executive lounge, but Andrew had made sure it was as unintimidating as possible. No linen tablecloths, no towering floral arrangements, just soup, sandwiches, and a little vase with a single daisy Lily had picked from the planter outside. While they ate, Andrew sat across from Lily, genuinely engaged, as she told him all about the book she was reading, something with talking animals and a dragon who liked tea. Maya relaxed slowly, visibly moved by how naturally he fit into the rhythm of their small world. After lunch, Lily climbed onto the plush chair in the corner of his office and began drawing with the colored pencils Andrew had asked his assistant to bring. He and Maya stood near the window sipping coffee. "She's fearless," Andrew said, watching Lily with quiet admiration. "She gets that from her father," Maya replied, then hesitated before he passed. "He always said we should raise her to believe the world would make space for her." Andrew nodded slowly. He would be proud. Maya looked down at her coffee. "There were days I thought I was failing her. I gave up teaching. I took jobs cleaning houses, tutoring at night. It was never about dreams, just survival." Andrew turned to her gently. "You've given her more than most children ever get." Their eyes met and held for a moment too long before either could say anything more. Lily bounced over with her drawing. "I made this," she announced, holding it up. It was a child's crayon masterpiece, 3 stick figures hand-in-handed. One had short dark hair and a suit, one had long brown hair, The last had a pink dress and a tiara. Andrew smiled. "Who's this?" "That's you," Lily pointed. "Because you're always holding coffee." She pointed again. "That's Mummy. And that's me." She looked proud. Andrew knelt to her level. "You drew us as a family." Lily tilted her head, suddenly shy. "Is that okay?" He looked at Maya, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. Andrew's voice was gentle. "It's more than okay." He pinned the drawing to the corkboard behind his desk. Later, while Lily napped on the couch with a blanket over her legs, Andrew read aloud from a well-worn book Maya had brought along, The Velveteen Rabbit. His voice was steady, warm, almost fatherly. Maya sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes never left him. She didn't say anything. But in that moment, watching the man who had every reason to guard his heart gently open it again for her daughter, she didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. Gratitude, trust, something dangerously close to hope. The days after their visit to the office passed like gentle waves, text messages, a shared photo of Lily with her drawing, a new book recommendation, a promise to meet for cocoa again soon, and then silence. Andrew stared at his phone late one night, thumb hovering over the screen. He had typed out the message already. "Dinner this weekend, just the three of us." He stared at the words for a long time, unsure why something so simple felt so heavy. His heart beat louder in his chest. Then, without warning, his phone screen dimmed and shifted. The auto-rotate caught movement from his photo gallery, and there it was, a frozen smile. His wife, her eyes alike, head tilted back in mid-laughter, one arm wrapped around their son. It had been their last family photo. Taken just a week before the crash, Andrew's throat closed up, his thumb hovered, then moved. He did not send the message. Instead, he locked the phone, turned off the screen, and laid it face down on the nightstand. The shadows in the room thickened. He sat there for a long time, unmoving. For 3 days, he sent nothing. He buried himself in meetings and spreadsheets, in task lists and numbers. His assistant asked if he wanted to reschedule the upcoming board dinner. "Fine, leave it," he muttered. He wasn't sure what he was avoiding more, confronting the past or facing the present. Across the city, Maya sat by the window, watching the clouds roll in. Rain streaked down the glass. Lily was at school, humming a holiday song she had decided to rewrite entirely. Maya wasn't sure how long she had been staring at the phone. She reread their last message thread. It had ended with a smiley face and a promise to call soon. Soon had stretched too long. She tried to reason with herself. Maybe he was busy, maybe something came up, maybe she was imagining things. But deep down she knew the signs, the soft fade out, the delayed replies, the space that grows between people who are too kind to say goodbye and too hurt to stay. She opened a drawer and pulled out the small box he had once brought to their apartment. A paper bakery box, now slightly flattened at the corners. She hadn't thrown it away. Inside were 2 cookies, still sealed, uneaten. She hesitated, then reached for a pen and a small card. She wrote slowly, carefully. "Thank you for letting us believe, even just for a while." Then she resealed the box and dropped it off at the security desk of his office building. No return address, no explanation. His closure. When Andrew saw the box sitting on his desk later that evening, something inside him cracked. He recognized it instantly. His hands didn't shake, but his chest felt like it might. He read the card 3 times, once with disbelief, once with guilt, once with grief. Then he walked over to the tall windows and stood with his arms crossed, staring at the city lights below. He remembered Lily's drawing, still pinned to his corkboard. He remembered Maya's eyes, soft and full of trust, when he read aloud from the book. And he remembered the moment he had hesitated to press send, held back not by doubt in her, but by fear of replacing someone he had loved. But love was never a replacement, and silence was never safety. He had chosen distance, thinking it would protect them. All he had done was break something that had barely begun to grow. Behind him, the office was silent. Outside, the world moved on, and Andrew Hale, for the first time in a long time, realized that some regrets did not come from loss, but from running too soon when something real asked to stay. New Year's Eve 1 year later, snow fell gently across the quiet city park, covering benches and sidewalks in a soft white hush. Lights flickered in the trees, remnants of the holiday still clinging to branches like they too were reluctant to let go of the season. Andrew Hale sat on the same old bench, the same dark wool coat, the same quiet stillness in his posture, and in his hands once again were 2 cups of hot cocoa he hadn't touched either. One for him, one for memory. It had become ritual, this sitting alone on New Year's Eve. But this year it felt different, not because the grief was gone, but because something else had taken root underneath it. Something quieter, warmer. He stared out across the park where families gathered, children shouted, lovers laughed. It didn't feel quite as far away as it once had. He almost didn't hear the crunch of footsteps through snow, almost. Then he saw the flash of pink belly. She came running ahead, her puffy coat unzipped, revealing a faded but carefully pressed princess dress beneath. It was a little too small now, the sleeves shorter, the hem riding up just slightly above her boots. But she wore it with the same pride, the same delight. Her crown was crooked, her smile was perfect. Maya followed a few steps behind, bundled in a soft grey coat, her hair tucked into a knitted hat. She looked nervous but hopeful. Andrew's heart skipped. Lily didn't say hello. She just climbed up onto the bench beside him and plopped down like she had every right to be there, which of course she did. Then she pulled something out of her pocket, a folded, glitter-sprinkled piece of construction paper, and handed it to him without ceremony. "We made this for you." Andrew took it, carefully unfolding the little card. On the front was a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in uneven crayon handwriting, it read, "Happy New Year, Mr. Andrew." Inside was a single sentence written in Lily's blocky letters. "You don't have to come, but we saved a seat for you." Andrew stared at the words. Then Lily leaned against his arm and whispered, "You can be in our family if you want." He didn't answer at first, couldn't. His throat closed, his vision blurred. The snow continued to fall in delicate flakes, clinging to their coats, their hair, the tips of Lily's eyelashes. Andrew turned to her, tears streaming silently down his face. He reached out and pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her small frame like she was the most fragile, most precious thing in the world. She hugged him back, her tiny hands pressing into his coat, and he wept. Not for the first time, but for the first time with no shame. He cried for what he lost. He cried for what he almost pushed away. He cried because somehow, despite the silence, despite the distance, they had come back. They had come for him. Maya stood quietly nearby, watching. She didn't interrupt. She didn't speak. When Andrew finally looked up, his eyes met hers. He didn't need to explain. She just smiled and nodded, a single soft, understanding nod. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and sat beside him. 3 people on a bench as 2 cups of cocoa and 1 new beginning. A full year had passed. The snow had returned, softer this time, floating down like blessings from a gentler sky. The park was lit with strings of golden lights that shimmered through the trees, and laughter echoed in the crisp air as families strolled, couples cuddled, and children ran with sparklers. But the bench remained. And now a new sign stood beside it. Simple wooden hand-carve, the bench where wishes come true, sponsored by the Hale Rivera Foundation for Families in Transition. The foundation had launched that spring quietly without press releases or headlines. Just quiet action, shelter grants, food programs, tuition aid, job placement, support for single parents, and stories. So many stories. Tonight, at the edge of the park, inside a cozy little community building, newly renovated by the foundation, Maya sat cross-legged on a rug. Around her, a group of wide-eyed children leaned in, their blankets tucked around their legs, their cocoa cups still steaming. She held up the worn, beloved book. "Once upon a time," she began, her voice soft and sure, There was a man who had everything and then lost it all. A few of the children stirred. Maya smiled until he met a girl in a pink princess dress and a crooked paper crown who gave him back the world. The children sighed, some smiling, some blinking slowly. It was more than a story. It was the truth wrapped in fairy tale edges. Outside, through the frosted window, lights from the park glittered like stars. Just a few blocks away, back on the bench beneath the now familiar tree, Andrew sat, bundled in his coat, the same spot, the same season, but nothing else was the same. In his lap was Lily, her curls tucked beneath a knit beanie, her eyes fluttering closed as he read her favorite bedtime story, one with castles, dragons, and brave little girls who always knew the right thing to say. Her head dropped gently against his arm. Fast asleep, Maya sat beside them, pulling a small quilt over Lily's legs. She didn't say anything, she just watched them both for a moment, a faint smile curving her lips. Andrew closed the book and ran a gentle hand over Lily's hair. Then he looked at Maya, his voice barely rose above the breeze. "Thank you for letting me come home." Maya reached over and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Above them, fireworks burst into bloom, red, gold, silver, scattering light across the sky like wishes finally kept. Lily stirred once, murmured something in her sleep, and nestled closer. Andrew leaned back against the bench and looked up. This was not the life he thought he would have. He was better. He was no longer the man who sat in the shadows with a cup of cocoa and a silent prayer. He was no longer lost in grief, chasing ghosts through holiday crowds. He was here, held, trusted, loved. The bench was no longer a monument to sorrow. It was a beginning. The place where wishes came true, the place where he had been found, and the place he would never have to leave again. Sometimes family is not who we're born to, but who finds us when we're lost. This was not just a story about a lonely CEO or a little girl in a pink dress. It was about hope returning when we least expect it. Even a cold park bench can become the beginning of a home. If this touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where we share tales that heal, inspire, and remind you you're never too broken to begin again. What would you say to someone sitting alone on New Year's Eve? Subscribe now.